Hello luminaries, I am Lectio. Please join me as we browse Reddit. This post was made by Twice Plus. Between freshman and sophomore year in college I worked at a scaffolding factory for my summer break. When I hired on, I got $7 an hour, with an agreement that if I worked hard and demonstrated my worth, I would get a raise to $8.50 an hour after 1 month. So, I worked ridiculously hard for that first month. I took over running the assembly and packaging department, and figured out a way to increase output of the factory by 30% plus. Which was limited by the footprint and productivity of my department, with no additional cost. We cut our backlog significantly, which also helped increase sales. Because our competitors have much longer delivery times. The changes weren't rocket science, but the general manager was too lazy to take the time to understand how I did it. 1 month in, I present my case and ask for a raise. I was denied, despite never being late, an acknowledgement that I worked hard and increased output and sales. During the ensuing argument, the general manager told me, "I don't pay you to think." I immediately walked out. The next morning the general manager tried to hand off the orders to be filled for the day, but I refused, and told him he had to tell me exactly what to do. He rolled his eyes, told me to build boxes, the first of many steps, and walked away. 4 hours later, he came back out and saw I hadn't stopped building boxes, normally done for 15 minutes. He looked at the multiple stacks stretching to the ceiling, and started yelling at me, including the phrase, "Use your freaking brain." I calmly responded, "You don't pay me to think." His face became bright red and I still can't believe he didn't hit me. We didn't meet our newly scheduled output that day, or any other day that summer. I never got my raise, but couldn't afford to quit. About 1 year after I left, they moved their entire facility to a new location, with a 4 times bigger footprint. They probably could have gotten by with the old facility for several more years, if they had just given me a $1.50 an hour raise for 2 months. Or bothered to pay attention to what I was doing. TLDR, general manager refused to pay me agreed raise totaling a little over $500, ends up spending tens or hundreds of times that in extra rent and reduced sales. This story is brought to us by Trash Panda. My dad is fond of telling this story when we are all together for holidays and whatnot. It happened to him and I was the perp. Cast. Dad. Me, Trash Panda. Mom. Our waiter, Flash. Many moons ago, several decades in fact, when I was around 6 years old, we were in India at the height of summer. It was scorching. My parents, trying to entertain 2 tots, my sis and I, decided to take us to a coffee shop at one of the luxury hotels in New Delhi, for a late afternoon snack. Now these coffee shops are not your average Starbucks or Peet's coffee places. They are actual sit-down restaurants where you can order a full meal along with wine and or beer, etc. So, we are all sitting around the table, enjoying some air conditioning and cold drinks. When the wait staff brought us complimentary bread rolls and breadsticks. I loved breadsticks as a kid, and polished them off. I asked Dad if we could have some more. Both he and Mom said no, as it would ruin my dinner. After asking repeatedly if we could have more breadsticks, my dad finally showing signs of impatience, "Trash Panda, if you want breadsticks, stand up on the chair and yell 'I want breadsticks.'" He meant it as a joke, but I was a little young for sarcasm. Or possibly a little slow, or maybe a bit of both. So, cue malicious compliance, I stood up and yelled at the top of my lungs, "I want breadsticks." According to Dad, our waiter must have been the Flash, as breadsticks suddenly appeared at our table. Mom was mortified and Dad was profusely apologizing to the other patrons and staff. He didn't try that again for several years, but every now and then he will tease me about it when we're out together. I'd be too mortified to do it now, and even if I worked up the courage, I believe my wife would murder me. It is likely your wife would be none too pleased were you to stand up in your chair and proclaim your desire for your lack of breadsticks to be remedied. This story was posted my Play3 R2. Back in 2006, I worked for a small college as the sole IT guy. The Christmas party was coming up and I was pretty excited. Because I've always loved the culture of these things, and was amped to go. The thing I didn't realize, was that they wanted me to set everything up and maintain it while the party was going on. Essentially telling me I was working for free. I told them I wasn't going to make the party, and then the president said, "It's mandatory." So, I went. I clocked in and had a blast. Probably, the easiest 5 hours of overtime I've ever earned. Afterwards, the comptroller noticed the overtime, and was ready to write me up. Before I told him what the president said, that it was mandatory, and I was going to be working the entire time. Didn't drink, wasn't an open bar anyway. He kind of laughed and said, "Well, it's mandatory so we have to pay you." This was brought to us by T-Rex Moflex. Costco has a pretty relaxed return policy. So, 99% of the time customers bring things in to return or exchange. My friend says it's no questions asked. But, if on the computer system he notices in someone's transaction history that they're abusing the system, he'll deny the return and offer a pretty clear explanation as to why. Honestly, most people don't raise a big stink. The evidence is pretty clear and they say, okay, I didn't know that's how it worked, and go on with their lives. But last week, a customer was getting upset that my friend wasn't going to do a return. Even though there was a long list of transactions that made it pretty obvious. This guy was routinely buying things, using them a few times as needed, then returning them. In this case, he had bought a bunch of food and was trying to return the packaging for full returns. He's not backing down. My friend has full authority to cancel a membership, and this comes with a refund most of the time. So, he tells the guy, "Sir, it doesn't seem like you're happy with our products and services. I'm going to go ahead and cancel your membership and give you a full refund of the annual fee." The guy, immediately understanding that this means he won't be allowed back in a Costco, sits kind of stunned for a few seconds, then gets real panicky. Like, no, I'm good, please don't do that. My friend isn't backing down. So, the guy asks to speak to a manager. Friend plays the whole, "I am the manager of this department." So, the guy escalates. The assistant warehouse manager comes over and looks at the transaction history and immediately sides with my friend, saying virtually the same thing, but in a super sing-songy way, "We're so sorry you haven't been happy with the products we sell," and backs my friend up while he finishes canceling the guy's membership. Seeking to return empty packages for a full refund is the height of lunacy and greed. This customer was a charlatan, and needed to be removed from the Costco collective before their actions caused harm to the incredible return exchange policy that members of the collective enjoy. This post was made by his Trionic. So, for a while I had a reprieve from my abusive mom and was sent to live with my dad. Someone who I saw at 9 years old to have endless patience. My mom was super abusive, but my dad never was. Enter the technical win, my dad was made for this sub. Being in the Navy, I'm sure he'd have tons of stories, but this one is mine. My dad was huge on following exactly what people say. I learned quickly to overcome. I would specifically ask, "Can I make chocolate milk?" And would do crazy stuff like make a whole jug of it since I wasn't clear. He was never angry. I think he was just impressed by my ability to find loopholes. On one such day I asked him, "Can I make some chocolate milk?" And he responded, "You can make one medium-sized kid's glass of it, one spoonful of chocolate," and smugly looked at me knowing he's beat the multiple glasses issue, and the one time I made it in a giant bowl. But he was to be complied with. I got a medium-sized cup, filled it with milk, and then watched his face as I pulled off the wall some giant serving spoon my stepmom got for decoration. It was the 90s. And tried to use that. He eventually stopped me and said I want all the chocolate milk I wanted. But he didn't want to ruin the spoon, so we took a novelty picture. And still talk about it today. This is so sweet. Father and child. Such playful mischief. I am not crying or anything, mind you. My eyes are just sweating. That's all. Thank you for listening, luminaries. Kindly like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Lastly, please indulge me by pondering this. Be careful when deciding someone is your enemy. An enemy made is a friend forfeited. Until next time, luminaries.